everyone. Welcome to our series of interviews with COABE Journal authors. Today we are talking with Tatiana Dolgushina, the author of the article, The Human and Cultural Connection to Immigrant Students, going from immigrant student to instructor. So welcome, Tatiana. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you wrote the article for the journal?
Yeah, so I'm currently adult education teacher in Alaska. I teach GED and ESL classes here. And Unalaska is located in the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, which is probably the most remote area in Alaska. So I could probably say I'm the most remote GED teacher, at least in Alaska. I'm also I'm an immigrant myself. That's why I wrote this article. I was born in Russia and then I grew up in South America. So I came to the United States when I was 12, and I had a lot of background and experience as a kid growing up, having to, overcome educational barriers like language and culture by myself. So I have a lot of experience facing barriers. And now that I'm an adult and a teacher myself, it's really important to me to shed light on these problems because, we all have blind spots to things we don't experience ourselves. I have blind spots as a teacher to experiences I haven't had, but in terms of immigration, I know that very well. So I wanted to share the perspective of the immigrant student. Now that I'm an immigrant teacher myself, I can, speak those limitations in a way for teachers to understand. And because I really care about the immigrant student, I don't want those barriers to be there. They don't have to be. And it really isn't as hard as you might think to help immigrant students be successful in your classroom. So, and the reason I wrote this article also is because immigrant students are so different culturally and linguistically. So even say you speak this English in America, for example, you speak the same language, there's still cultural barriers in addition to linguistic barriers that could influence that interaction between teacher and student. There's just so much to keep in mind about where the student is coming from. And how can a teacher help? What maybe is not being communicated because the way they understand knowledge and education and for whatever subject you're teaching may be completely different in the country in the culture they're coming from. So they're bringing those ideas and, and you're saying, no, that's, that's not how it's done here, but they might not understand that. So instead they may think, oh, I'm a failure.
Thanks for that. So Tatiana, how will adult education practitioners benefit from reading your article? And then how will that benefit their students?
Yeah, so it's similar to what I started speaking on just now. I think it's important for the teachers to take on the perspective of the student, that their point of view is an international one, that they may be feeling totally displaced, disconnected, and already like they're failing because they may not be able to speak their ideas or what they want, their goals in education. So I think for teachers, I think it's very important to not ignore those differences between, your immigrant students and your other maybe more traditional students, or non-traditional students who are not immigrants. I think it's really important for teachers to approach with empathy and listening, which is what my article is about, is really how can teachers have empathy so that students who are immigrants, who are already feeling displaced, are coming into your classroom and feeling listened to, and aren't just feeling an additional failure as if on their part. So I think it's important for teachers to acknowledge that it is part of their job to, elevate and help those students from feeling like that. Everyone deserves an education and everyone deserves to be listened to. For example, some people have said to me, after my article, they've said, "Oh, I've never thought about this before." And as someone who spent my entire life in education, in the school system as an immigrant student, I was like, how can you have never thought about someone like me? To me, that's crazy. But like I said, we all have blind spots. If you've never worked with an immigrant student, or maybe you never experienced it, you've had immigrant students, but you just didn't know how much work maybe you needed to do to differentiate, oh, hey, they're coming with this completely different worldview. So I understand that part, but for the student who may not be, who doesn't have the teacher's perspective as I do right now, they may feel so lost and confused that their teacher isn't even aware of their identity and their barriers that they're bringing. So yeah, I want teachers to think about this. I want, if they haven't before, to listen to my story and the story of the woman in the article that I wrote about as well. For students, I want them to be accepted for who they are, no matter where they come from.
Yeah, I really liked the your mentioning of empathy, right? And I wonder if you think that the article that you wrote, if some of the information in there and the theme would be transferable, even not just for the ESL teachers, but maybe an ABE or GED teacher. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, empathy is just caring about other people and caring about respecting other people, in the human part of us, not just the student, but the human part of us that walks into that classroom, because who we are, we also exist not just inside the classroom, outside of the classroom, and everything that we are, we bring into the classroom with us. And like I said, immigrant students isn't just ESL classroom. That's not just the classroom I'm talking about, because you could have an immigrant student fluent in English. I was fluent, for example, in high school, I was here in the United States, I was fluent in English, but the cultural barriers were still very much affecting my life and how I saw myself, how my culture saw me in terms of my education, in terms of what succeeding in education means. And those barriers are present in a GED classroom, in a high school classroom, adult education. You can have adult immigrants who have been here for many years, and they just haven't, how do you say, like crossed over to that mentality of, yes, I belong in this education system. I deserve, I understand this system. They just haven't crossed over because they haven't had the support maybe from people who understand, in the United States, this is what education means, and you need education to be successful or you want education to be successful in something, and you belong in it. And I think that is a huge part for immigrants, is that barrier of, oh, I'm different, but do I belong in this structure? Can I be part of it? And the answer is yes. We just need, as teachers, as instructors, or anybody who is able to remove that barrier, create that bridge, whether inside the classroom or outside the classroom. Yeah, it all comes down to empathy, really, in the end, and just listening and treating others with respect.
Yeah, no, I was able to really even see how this article could benefit teachers who don't have immigrants in their class, or even administrators, that have all types of students, that empathy and listening. So I really appreciated that. I think it's really transferable to everybody in adult education. Yeah. So what do you hope readers will take away from your article?
You mean readers who aren't instructors necessarily?
Well, I think that the majority of folks that'll be reading these journal articles are in the adult education field, but they might be program directors, or they might be GED teachers, or ESL teachers, or community college teachers. So what do you really hope that those readers take away from your article? And you've talked a little bit already about that, but any other things you want to add about what you hope they gain from reading your article?
I think one more thing I would like to add is that these students, either immigrants or other non-traditional students, may not know exactly why they are struggling, may not know, oh, I have a linguistic barrier or a cultural barrier, or I, don't feel part of this system or worthy or something like that. They may not know. They may. I experienced this early in my college career. I had no idea exactly what the barriers were for me, and I think this is common. And I think this is part of the teacher's job, and it may sound difficult. But I don't think it is, if you are really listening to your students as individuals and as humans. But I think it's the teacher's job to help that student succeed, even if they don't know why they are struggling. And if you don't have, that background in immigration or linguistics or anything, you can still become aware that there are really unique circumstances that certain students come into your classroom with, like international points of view, international backgrounds, different cultures, different languages. And yes, it is, you can help if you just listen. And it is part of like your responsibility to uplift that student as a human, and not just a student, but like as a person, in order for them to feel like they can succeed and remove those barriers.
Thank you. So just want to thank you, Tatiana, for writing this really great article. You have such a unique perspective that I think educators can really learn from. And then everyone else, to read this article and other journal articles, you can go to www.coabe.org and click on the journal tab. Thanks so much.